This is the Daytona International Speedway, the best-known stock car racetrack in America. In today's Firecracker 400 race, compelling stories surround two of the best-known names in the history of the sport. Richard Petty will be gunning for an unprecedented 200 stock car victory, and Cale Yarborough, who will try to duplicate his pole-sitting win in February's Daytona 500. And to heighten the drama, Air Force One is flying a special guest into town as the crowd and drivers at Daytona await the radio command from the nation's most visible racing fan.
All right, gentlemen, start your engines.
Now 40 other drivers will try to steal the spotlight from Yarborough and Petty as the president flies on in to join the crowd of more than 100,000 for the Firecracker 400 from Daytona Beach, Florida. It's a sunny Independence Day in Daytona Beach, Florida, and the Grand National Stock Car Racing crowd has come back to the Daytona International Speedway for one of the sport's most important events, the Firecracker 400. Hello, I'm Jim Lampley. This race marks in each year the midway point of the Grand National Stock Car Racing season, and of course, being held here on the circuit's most fabled and prestigious speedway, Daytona, it is one that every driver wants to win. Working with me as our expert commentator, as he does in all forms of automobile racing, is Sam Posey. Sam, potential for a piece of history today.
Yeah, it certainly is, Jim. The piece of history you referred to is the possibility that Richard Petty, who has won 199 Grand National Stock Car races, far more than anyone else, will actually win his 200th today. That would be incredible, something I think we'd all remember. The biggest obstacle, however, to Richard's success comes in the form of Cale Yarborough, a man who is on the pole position and who set a new record in qualifying for this race. It's worth noting that Cale has won both of the races this year that he started from pole position, so he is going to be very tough.
One of those two races, of course, the Daytona 500 on this circuit earlier this year. Working with Sam and me also today on pit row, a reporter who sees as many of these races as any other reporter during the course of the year, Larry Newberg.
Thanks, Jim. You know, every driver here will be facing 41 others all day, but also two other items. One, the heat. Temperatures expected to be in the 90s, and we are in Florida. Middle of the summer could be oppressive. And then there's the rain. It has rained here each of the last 3 days, just about the time this race should be halfway over. It could end at any moment, and every driver on the circuit knows it.
As we look at the track now, the 42 cars are in their final pace lap before they'll take the green flag. Quickly, we'll run down the first few rows for you. Row 1, car 28 on the pole, Cale Yarborough. Car 3 on the outside, Dale Earnhardt, second in the point standings. Row 2, car number 9 on the inside is Bill Elliott. Car number 44 on the outside, Terry Labonte. In row 3, David Pearson in car 16, the old veteran on the inside. Very similar in driving style to the man on the outside in car 43, Richard Petty. In row number 4, Tommy Ellis on the inside, the one big surprise in the first 6 rows, and veteran Buddy Baker in car 21 on the outside of the track. Row 5, 55 is the veteran Benny Parsons on the inside of the track, 22 Bobby Allison outside, and in row 6, number 1 is Lake Speed on the inside. Number 11, the points leader in the NASCAR standings right now, Darrell Waltrip of Franklin, Tennessee, on the outside. You might also note number 12, Neil Bonnet is back in row 10. And row 11, number 15, Ricky Rudd. They should run among the leaders at some point, as may the man all the way back in the last row, row 21, car number 27, Tim Richmond. And now as they come around turn 4, they are just moments away from the anticipated green flag that will start this race, 400 miles. That is 160 laps around this 2.5-mile banked oval speedway.
Jim, very much on everyone's mind is the fact that last night heavy rains here washed the track clean. The question now, these are the very first laps that will be run on this track. There's no groove of rubber built in to hold the cars in the turns.
Qualifying speeds were very close to 200 miles per hour. Cale Yarborough was above 199 miles per hour in qualifying for this race. A new record in qualifying for the Firecracker 400, and they take the green flag. They're going off on lap 1. Yarborough holding his lead on the inside of the track. Earnhardt is staying right with him. There's a little bit of action as they mix it up in the rows behind them, but Cale Yarborough is off to a very smooth start and holds the lead as now Earnhardt tries to go by him on the top of the track.
And a puff of smoke from one of the cars. It might have been Lake Speed there. Earnhardt in the lead going down the, as they come off that turn. Jim Speed's about 199, almost 200 miles an hour.
The number 1 car of Lake Speed is the one that was blowing smoke as they came out of turn 2 and onto the back straightaway. Now they are into turn 3, and as they come around turn 3, it is still Earnhardt on the lead.
And at this point, obviously, 400 miles roughly to go. It's important to lead, but on the other hand, you do have to begin to set up your strategy for the entire race. It's a hot day, going to get a lot hotter before the day is over. You have to try to conserve your energy. There's an awful lot ahead.
One lap down as they go into turn one on the second lap. It is Earnhardt in the lead. Number 44, Terry Labonte, is now lined up behind him in second place. Yarborough and Petty are in third and fourth places, and they should run among the leaders all day, though neither of them may try to go to the lead early in the race, particularly Petty, Sam.
Well, he has it, but even as you say that, Petty running, you see Labonte sweeping by into the lead there, Jim. Now, Richard Petty running much faster and further to the front than he usually does. Could the pressure on him to win his 200 mean that he will push a little bit harder throughout this race today? We have no idea, but it's unusual to see him that far up.
Good smooth start, no incidents yet as they go by and begin lap number 3. It is Labonte on the lead, Dale Earnhardt in second place. Again, Yarborough in third place, Petty in fourth place, right behind him. Those four have now begun to separate themselves from the rest of the pack.
A major consideration at this point, of course, is trying to grab the lead if you possibly can to get the few extra championship points. You get 5 points for being in the lead. This is when it's maybe easiest to grab those 5 extra points. All right, they're sweeping there into turn 3, high onto that banking. That is on the eastern side of the speedway.
And now through turn 4, where there have been major renovations in this track as a result of a series of accidents that took place earlier this year.
Yes, and as a result of all that, there's a new configuration. You see the enormous apron of pavement there, and beyond that is a big high wall. Bobby Allison, Ricky Rudd, Darrell Waltrip have all had big crashes there, and so the speedway decided to put up a wall for safety purposes. It is about a $500,000 wall, money purely out of pocket just for reasons of safety.
And now as they go down the back straight, it is still Labonte holding the lead ahead of Earnhardt and Yarborough. Quickly a look at how NASCAR points are awarded over the course of a season. The formula tied to a racer's finish in each race, and as Sam suggested, 5 additional bonus points to each driver who leads a lap, 5 additional points to the driver who leads the most laps. Coming into this race, Waltrip is the leader in point standing, Earnhardt second, and Bill Elliott third. Terry Labonte, the leader in the race right now, is fourth. And now you see the car of Buddy Baker, the man who won this race a year ago, coming in toward pit row with the smoke coming out of the back of the car. So Baker obviously is in trouble at this point in the race, and that will occasion a yellow flag. So they'll race to the end of this lap and then solidify their standings for the yellow caution flag. And we'll be back with more of the Firecracker 400, the racing from here in Daytona Beach, right after this. Back at Daytona, racing under the green flag, and now the 2 central characters have moved to the front of the stage. Cale Yarborough, the pole sitter, on the lead. Richard Petty chasing him in second place. Before the race, Larry Newbert talked to Cale Yarborough.
Fellow competitors on the racetrack, how aware of them are you, and do you respond that differently given their individual driving styles?
Well, I'm quite aware of who's around me during the race. You know, I know each car, each by color and number and everything else. And there are some people, especially at a place like Daytona, that you had rather run side by side or bumper to bumper with than you had someone else. But sometimes you can't pick your choices of who you want to run with. But you just take advantage of what comes along, really. You know, if there's somebody there that you may not be real fond of running door-to-door with, then you're a little more careful than you are with somebody that you know that if you run door-to-door with them, they aren't going to crowd you. They aren't going to hope they aren't going to make a mistake. Of course, we all do, but this is just something that you just have to play by ear as the race goes on.
And as the race goes on, it is Yarborough who is in front, Petty right behind him. Sam Posey, after 20 years of racing together, they know each other about as well as they possibly can.
And they've been drafting each other throughout the race, which has helped them to have better gas mileage than the cars that were not able to draft other cars. The result is that both these men have been running longer now than a majority of the field who have come in for pit stops. But I think now, Jim, both of the leaders are coming in at the same time. They're coming in past that new wall, which allows for a quicker entry into the pits. The pre-race talk was of more danger because of higher entry speeds to the pits. Both these men come in safely. We see Yarborough headed for his pit now. Petty is stopped. There was a controversy. You see Petty on the lower part of the screen, Yarborough on the upper part. Controversy before the race. Only 6 men are allowed over the pit wall. Evidently, there have been infringements in the last few races. Petty, as you can see, getting away first, but remember, his pit lies earlier on the track, so they're going to be very close together. You're going to see them. Petty does, however, have the better of the exchange in the pits. Round 1 of the pits to Richard Petty.
Petty comes out of the pits ahead of Cale Yarborough. Petty changed right side tires, refueled. Possible for us to tell there for the moment exactly what Yarborough did, but probably exactly the same things. And now it is Richard Petty ahead of Cale Yarborough and the car which had momentarily taken the lead in the race while those two were in there. 22 Bobby Allison has now come in for a pit stop, so they will assume the lead again. And now let's go down to Larry Newber in Richard Petty's pit.
The pit stop, Jim, was routine. They did put a little more bite in the cars when they get hotter as the race wears on. You're going to want a race car to stick to the track, so that was the only unusual aspect of the pit stop. One thing that is not routine is to see both Cale Yarborough and Richard Petty running so close to the front so early on. This means that both of them are feeling very racy, and that could be bad news for the rest of the field.
Okay, Larry, and even as you spoke, here's what happened on the track. You're going to see car number 8, Bobby Hillin Jr., as he came out of turn 2 and lost control.
Well, he lost control there, Jim, at about 190 miles an hour. So it gives you some idea how fast he's probably still moving at this point. That car, 3,700 pounds. It hits the bank, a tremendous clout, but because of the strength of these cars, no injury is likely at all. He is the son of a man that owned cars at Indianapolis, and he's one of the youngest drivers in NASCAR racing. I think a big future despite what's just happened.
And the good news, Sam Posey, is that Hillin is out of the car and okay, but under the caution flag, Richard Petty has gone back into the pits. The first pit stop was under the green. Now under the yellow, Petty is changing the left side rubber. He will fall back in the standings as the other drivers go by, and out on the racetrack, Cale Yarborough in car 28 has taken the lead. Now it is still Cale Yarborough in the red and white car number 28 on the lead. He has been pressed in the last couple of laps by car number 3, the blue and yellow one, Dale Earnhardt. Behind them, Bobby Allison, number 22, is in 3rd place. Richard Petty, who had dropped as far back as 12th, has moved back up into 4th place. Joe Ruttman is in 5th, but the 4 cars on your screen right now are the leading pack. They are Yarborough, Earnhardt, Allison, and Petty.
Petty has been the fastest moving car on the track, Jim, since he was back in 12th there. He's moved up steadily, drafting in and out among the other cars effortlessly, it would seem, taking that high line for which he is so famous, and now, of course, stalking the leader. Richard Petty is having himself a very fine day.
It remains Yarborough on the lead. Yarborough in a car which is called a Chevrolet. Petty's car is called a Pontiac. We should just briefly mention there is only the faintest relationship between these cars and the cars of similar brand name that you would see on a showroom floor.
Absolutely right. Certainly couldn't buy these at your local dealer. The bodies resemble Ford, Chevrolet, Pontiac, but the chassis, the motors, the transmission, the suspension, everything is race built by specialists who build the cars down here in the southern part of the United States. They're assembled, of course, by the teams to the team's own specifications. They are pure racing machines. Jim, looks good.
There goes Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt moving to the inside and now trying to get past Cale Yarborough. Couldn't quite get him. Yarborough, it looks like, is going to hold the lead. Now here comes Earnhardt again with that inside position as they come onto the front straight. They are racing right in front of the grandstand, and it is Dale Earnhardt for the moment with his nose just in front. You saw Bobby Allison moving up almost between the two cars as he took a look at what is happening in the front. And now, exciting racing as they go toward turn 2. Earnhardt and Yarborough pulling back away a little bit from Bobby Allison. Petty just biding his time for the moment in 4th place and watching all the action in front of him.
Allison now trying to decide which of the two cars to draft. You see him now behind Earnhardt. Evidently that worked so well. He slingshots by, and Petty made his move. He decided to watch Allison. He stuck with Allison and surged from 4th into 2nd.
So a wholesale change. Bobby Allison in car number 22 has taken the lead. Richard Petty has gone with him into 2nd place. Yarborough suddenly finds himself in 3rd, and Earnhardt, who just seconds ago was dicing for the lead, is now back in 4th place.
Try to imagine the force of the air against the car when it is going 200 miles an hour. That's the whole idea of this drafting. If you can be behind another car, as Petty right now is behind Allison, and let that other car break that air out of the way for you, you can run with as little as 2/3 throttle, Jim, and still maintain your speed.
Of course, there's an element of trust involved in that.
Oh, tremendously. You have got to be sure that the men around you are not going to make a mistake, and that's why...
There goes Petty, and there goes Yarborough with him. As they go down the back straight, it is Richard Petty now in turn 3 who has taken the lead. They'll come out of turn 4 and onto the front straight now with Petty in the lead, Yarborough in second place, back in third place, that is Bobby Allison, and Earnhardt is in fourth place. The crowd is going wild as we are seeing action-filled, exciting racing in the Firecracker 400.
Well, of course, they like not only the action, they like Richard Petty leading. It's been very exciting to see him come up from 12th there into the lead. The crowd here is a partisan crowd. They love Richard Petty. There's no question about it.
Richard Petty, who has won in his career 199 Grand National races, far more than any other racer, and going for number 200 here today. Love to get it on this race course. Petty, at this moment, leading the race ahead of Cale Yarborough, and earlier Sam Posey spoke to him about this event.
Richard, we see you racing, of course, out there in the middle of what looks like a maelstrom of activity, and you're in the hot cockpit and so forth. But what is it like for you?
Well, I feel like that I'm most relaxed. Okay, you know, you say, well, you know, you're running 200 mile an hour and people running at you and 150 degrees inside the car, and, you know, anything can happen and all that. But again, I think the peace of mind, I guess, is what it is, that you feel like that you've got something there and you want to express yourself, and that's the way I express myself. Instead of being a painter or a golfer or somebody that, you know, that creative deal, I create my own deal through driving a race car.
Win number 199 for Petty came earlier this year in a 500-mile race in Dover, Delaware, setting the stage for a possible historic milestone.
The 200 win, does something abstract like that mean much to you?
Not really. I mean, you know, nobody's close to 199, right? So if I look at it this way, if somebody else had done 199 or won 200, then I think it would be an obsession with me. I think that no matter what, I'd just eat and sleep it and do everything to try to get there. But when you're breaking your own record, it's not really a record to you. All it gets to be then is just numbers.
Richard, tell us about the possibility of politics in your future. Is it a case of where there's smoke, there's fire, or is that...
Well, I don't know. Right now I'm a county commissioner in Randolph County in North Carolina, and I've been for 6 years. And you know, the idea of right now of politics and racing can't mix a whole lot more because of the time element. Any other things that I would go into at the particular time would take more of my time, and I've got no more time. Where I go from here in my political career, I don't know. You know, if I stop racing in 2 or 3 years, it's going to be one thing. If I stop in 10 years, it's going to be something else. I'm going to be further on down the road. So right now, I've made no decision on what's going on. I am interested in politics.
Now, as we come back to the Daytona International Speedway, Petty is still holding the lead. Yarborough dueling him for it. Now, Cale Yarborough trying to get underneath Richard Petty, and he has gone by him. So for the moment, it is Yarborough in car number 28 who takes the lead. Petty in second place, Dale Earnhardt third, Bobby Allison fourth. It would be no surprise for any of those four to win the race. We'll be back with more of the Firecracker 400 after this. Back at Daytona, and you can see Air Force One carrying President Ronald Reagan as it lands at the airstrip just adjacent to this racetrack, hovering even now over the backstretch as the cars go by. The leaders have just taken their second scheduled pit stop for the race, and for the moment it is car number 22, Bobby Allison at the helm, which has assumed the lead in the race. And there's a look at Allison's car on the left-hand side of your screen. Car number 7 with him represents the third generation of racing in the Petty family. That is Kyle Petty, Richard's son, but he has been lapped and is not among the leaders. This is a big moment here. Stock car racing, a sport tied to conservative political traditions. Probably safe to guess that the president enjoys the political support of most of the 100,000 or so here. They'll be anxious to greet him as he comes over to the track. And now, Bobby Allison, the leader, is going into the pits, so he will relinquish the lead as he takes this pit stop. Bobby Allison, the overall points champion a year ago. He's won this race twice, in 1980 and again in 82.
A routine pit stop here for Allison, changing that outside rubber. They like to change the outside tires, Jim, to give the car the best conceivable adhesion, and also, in case there's any debris on the track, you want to have a tire that is not worn down close to the cord. Typical NASCAR pit stop, well less than 20 seconds. It is amazing the work that they can do in a short period of time, and the savage acceleration of these 3,700-pound cars as they get back up to speed. 0 to 60 in something like this is about 3.5 seconds.
And now out on the track, the leaders for the moment are the two men who began the day as the focus of this story. Number 28, Cale Yarborough in the lead, trying to repeat the feat of earlier this year when he won the pole and then won the race for the Daytona 500, trying to do it again in the Firecracker 400. Right behind him, in car number 43, Richard Petty, trying today to win his 200th Grand National Stock Car race. They are the leaders at this moment. We're a little more than halfway through the Firecracker 400, and we'll be back for more racing from the Daytona International Speedway a little later on. Back at Daytona with less than 8 laps to go in the Firecracker 400, Richard Petty has taken the lead in car 43. Cale Yarborough in 28 chasing him. At this moment, a chess game, Sam Posey, between two of the real grand masters of the sport.
And a chess game in which Richard Petty, despite the fact he's leading the race, he is in check basically at this point, because Cale Yarborough, positioned where he is, can pass Richard Petty at will. Richard probably is in agony at this point, despite the fact that he's out front. He has absolutely nothing he can do to defend himself. Cale can sweep by him whenever he wants.
Remember that Cale Yarborough qualified for this race nearly 3 miles per hour faster than Richard Petty, and based on what we've seen throughout the course of the race, there can be very little question that Yarborough's car is capable of accelerating by Petty at almost any moment, particularly when he's in this position, drafting off of Petty's rear bumper, simply waiting for the moment to make the move. Petty going for the 200th victory of his illustrious career. Cale Yarborough trying to win for the second time this year on the Daytona International Speedway. In February, he won the Daytona 500. So two of the greatest names in the history of the sport are prepared to duel over the last 5 laps, and we'll be back with that in a moment. Back at the Daytona International Speedway, and we are building toward a dramatic finish. President Ronald Reagan looking on alongside Bill Brance Jr., whose family built this racetrack. And out on the course, it is Richard Petty in car 43, Cale Yarborough in car 28. Now as they try to position themselves for the last lap burst to the finish, when they cross the yellow line on the front straight here, there will be 3 laps remaining in the race. They're now on lap 150, and a car is spun out. Doug Heveron's car is spun out in turn 1. So now the yellow caution flag may be coming out. Indeed, as I look just below us, the yellow caution flag is going to come out. This will, in all intents and purposes, perhaps be the last lap of the race. The rule requires them to solidify under the caution at the beginning of the next lap.
It's an incredible situation now. Are they going to race to the line? This is an interesting rule situation, Jim. You are allowed to race to the line once the yellow has come out. Cale Yarborough did that. Richard Petty is counterattacking. This may be the race that we're looking at here as they sweep up into traffic. A highly dangerous situation. These
coming down the front straight. Here they are, Sam. They will come across the yellow line just about together, but Petty had the lead. By the nose of the car, Richard Petty was just in front of Cale Yarborough as they came across the line. Now they have completed 158 laps. There are 2 laps to go, and in all likelihood, we would have to guess this race is going to end under a caution and Petty's going to win.
Incredible, yes, and as you know, you are allowed, I just restate this, to race to the finish line under the yellow flag, and that's what we saw. We saw Yarborough realized the predicament that he was in, that he had to get by. Here's the Petty pit crew. You see what they think has happened.
Well, they believe, and probably safely so, that the race has ended, that there will be no more racing under a green flag, and as the caution stays out for these last 2 laps, Richard Petty will simply hold on to first place. Doug Heveron's car, number 01, is nestled just on the infield inside of turn 1. It's going to take some time to move it, and in all likelihood, there will be no more racing. So Petty will come by now with 1 lap to go, and behind Petty, Cale Yarborough is turning off and heading toward pit road. Hard to imagine what is going through Cale's mind. He can sacrifice second place if he makes a pit stop here, but Petty has the lead with 1 lap to go.
Cale coming into the pits. Petty still out on the racetrack, piling up an enormous advantage now. What could be the reason? No, Cale goes right through the pits and back out. I'm trying to think if there's any remaining element of strategy that could have dictated that move. I can't think of it.
Hard to imagine exactly what Cale Yarborough was thinking at that point, unless he just simply decided in disgust that the race was over.
But he would have given away other positions. We have Terry Labonte running back there, so I don't know.
The scoreboard has been confused for the moment. Now it shows lap 159 completed, so Richard Petty may in fact get a checkered flag as he comes down the front straight the next time. We're following Petty now on your screen as his car at the front of the pack goes through turn 3. They have slowed down for the yellow caution flag. Now, just to take a look back at exactly what happened, the caution flag came out as they went down the backstretch. Cale Yarborough moved to the front of the pack ahead of Richard Petty. They were racing to the yellow line. The caution actually begins on the next completed lap after the crash when the caution flag comes out. So, Richard Petty, by passing Cale Yarborough coming out of turn 4 on the front straight and beating him to the yellow line by the margin of the nose of his car, won the race. As they come down this time, you are going to see a checkered flag for car number 43. Richard Petty has won the 200th race of his incomparable Grand National Stock Car Racing career, and an unexpected thrill for the crowd here, which in effect saw the race end 3 laps early.
And a sensational rendezvous with destiny for Richard Petty, who has political aspirations. He will now, not for the first time, be meeting President Reagan as part of the victory celebration. Richard Petty, on this day, has fulfilled a great dream.
Let's take another look back now at what happened on what was in effect the deciding lap. Remember, the rule states that once the yellow flag comes out, the racers must solidify in their order by the beginning of the next lap. So as they came down the backstretch here, Sam Posey, with 2.5 laps to go, this was in effect a race to the flag for the championship.
And Cale Yarborough made the classic move. He pulled out of Richard's slipstream and passed him decisively as they went into turn 3. At this point, Richard must have had his heart in his mouth, but he did the one thing that was left open to him. He counterattacked and started down low. And as they came out, remember, this is the last turn before the finish line. As they came out of the turn with a lot of traffic ahead of them, it was really a drag race to the finish. They touched briefly there as they came toward the finish, and really it was just a question of horsepower between the two and fate. And fate seemed to smile on Richard Petty this time.
Now watch the finish as they came down the front straight. There was the flag. There's the yellow line. Petty won by the nose of his car. They ran 2 more laps under the caution flag, but the race had been decided right there at that moment on your screen. When we come back, we'll be talking with Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, and the guest of honor, President Ronald Reagan. Back at the Daytona International Speedway, here are the final standings. As we suggested he might, Cale Yarborough sacrificed second place with that impromptu pit stop as Harry Gant wound up second, but Richard Petty emerged victorious for his 200th Grand National Stock Car Racing victory. And right now, Larry Newber is in the garage with the disappointed Cale Yarborough.
Cale, that is one eventuality you just can't predict, can you? A late yellow flag.
No, you can't. You know, I was sitting right where I thought I wanted to be, and just one of those things. I got beat at my own game, I guess. Of course, Richard's car was awful strong, and then I misread the flagman's fingers, and when we came down for the caution flag there, I thought the race was over. And I guess my brain blew up is what happened. It was just a dumb thing for me to do, and I came in, which lost some more positions.
And now, in an adjacent booth, Jim Lampley is with Richard Petty and the president.
And now here in what for today has become the winner's circle, I am with the guest of honor, President Ronald Reagan, and the honored man of the day who has won his 200th Grand National Stock Car Race, Richard Petty. Mr. President, it's great to have you here. A member of your staff intimated to me yesterday that although you are interested in the fortunes of all race drivers, you might be excited to see this occasion, Richard Petty winning his 200th. It's quite a day, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. I understand that no one in the whole history of racing has ever done that or ever won 200 races.
And you called 4 or 5 laps on the radio. How'd you think your race call went?
Not very good. I'm glad that when I was a sports announcer, it was mainly baseball and football and a few things like swimming and that sort of thing, because I was having an awful lot of laps after I got here when I was trying to figure out who was where.
I can tell you myself that it can be confusing, and it was a bit of a confusing finish. I wonder, Richard, when you noticed that Heveron had left the track, the caution flag was going to come out, and you had, in effect, a 1-lap race to the flag for the victory.
Well, just to the one across the start-finish line. You know, you're going in one direction, then when you turn at the start-finish line, you look down into the first and second corner just as far as you can see. And I seen the car sitting on the infield. And when I did, then I just put it to the floor and just waited for Cale to make his move. And when he did, then he just went in the corner a little bit too hard up there, and his car didn't stick, and I was able to cut back beside of him, and then we kind of touched a couple times, and I beat him to the line.
You weren't worried when he went past you?
You what?
You weren't worried when he went past you there on the backstretch?
Yeah, I was worried. I was sitting there for the last 40 laps wondering what he was going to, I know what he was going to do and where he was going to do it, but I didn't know how I was going to overcome it. But what happened when the boy spun, then everything was strictly reflex. He had to do something, and I had to do something. The figuring that both of us done never came to be. So it was a act and a react. He acted and I reacted.
You've been around this sport so long that you may not get terribly excited at the prospect of winning a race, but was there a little extra thrill in winning, knowing that the #1 fan was here today?
Well, definitely. 200 is very, very important, but under the circumstances, with all the presidents that's ever been in the United States, this is the first one that's ever showed up at a racetrack. So everybody's got to go from that, from racing standpoint, and I wanted to be the one that was able to welcome him to Grand National Racing.
Richard, congratulations to you on this terrific occasion. Mr. President, thanks for being with us.
Well, pleased to be here, and it's been a very exciting day, and I join in the congratulations. I even have a conflict of interest here because he's doing some yeoman service in a political sense.
Well, the political aspirations of Richard Petty had nothing to do with this finish here. This was a matter of racing skill and horsepower in one of the closest finishes ever. Look at that.
Here is the final order of finish. Of course, the winner, Richard Petty. Harry Gant got second place as Cale Yarborough's brief tour of the pits dropped him to third. Bobby Allison fourth, Benny Parsons fifth, Bill Elliott sixth, Terry Labonte seventh. Dale Earnhardt, by finishing eighth, took over the top spot in the NASCAR points standings. Others, David Pearson, the Silver Fox, finished 17th. Heveron, who spun out to cause that exciting finish, was treated and released at the track hospital, as was the man who spun out earlier. Bobby Hillen, and Darrell Waltrip, by finishing 31st, has dropped out of the points lead for NASCAR. But once again, the winner is 200th Grand National victory, the man they call King Richard, Richard Petty. So that's the story from Daytona Beach and the Firecracker 400.